Paul? Yeah. I just got here a couple minutes ago. It's 2:05. Yeah. And I was a little concerned because I've been sending an email today about the constitutional rights of myself. Yeah. But then I got to looking at the Bank of International Settlements. Yes. And it looks like there's $12 trillion in deposits and $8 trillion in loans. Yeah. Now, this American Bankers Association, could you get me the members of that? See, when I send an email, I noticed that somebody had cut off, yes, the bottom of part of the email, and the only thing it has here is that the petitioner didn't sign the actual acknowledgement of a receipt of copy of this order. Yes. hmm that in and of itself is somewhat of a concern. Yeah. Now, I really do think that somebody's been obstructing my right to communicate with those in law enforcement. Do you have any knowledge of that? Have you been paid to intentionally obstruct, maybe make changes to, yeah, any email that I was sending to any person in law enforcement? Yeah. Because it is an actual crime, and for some reason, the police and sheriff's departments are not wanting to enforce the laws. Yeah. Now, this family that doesn't exist, the top secret family of those that don't know, your actual relatives, your genetic offspring. Oh. I asked to speak to my sons because of what is, well, see, this is an actual forgery. Yep, that's a forgery. This signature, yes, is more than likely not the same as that signature. Yes. This petitioner signature is a requirement of law to be able to issue a court order. Now, as many times as I told you this, these 5 minors named were kidnapped. They were taken from me on July 2nd of 2011 when my wife, yes, made a false police report of me committing domestic violence and child abuse. Now, I included in this email, yes, the expungement order from the judiciary of Guam. I actually have no criminal record. Yep. And then I gave you a copy of the marriage license from the United Nations. Yes. And then I gave you a copy of the protection order and the weapon surrender form. And then there's what's known as the rights of the individuals, both the adults and the children. Yeah. Then there's the Venti-McKinney Act that you as a state and the United States are obligated to be very, very careful with those that are homeless at the time of abduction. Then there's that Constitution. I thought you would have read the Constitution. Now, the dogs that happen to be your offspring because you were having sex with what? They obviously don't value their citizenship, or quite possibly they're not citizens. Were they manufactured? Did you make them? See, any person that doesn't understand the vesting power of the United States Supreme Court, there's this convention that they once reviewed that has to do with the Hague Convention of International Child Abduction. Yeah. Now, that U.S. Supreme Court, for some reason, did think that it could have devastating consequences for any child that is taken from their parents, yes, without any of the protections of the law. Now, one of the worst forms of child abuse, yes. Now, I have repeatedly made mention, yes, that when my wife filed for dissolution of marriage, yeah, she falsely accused me of violating the restraint provisions of the protection order, yes, that were issued in 2011, where I did not receive any actual notice or opportunity to be heard. You served me on Guam. Now, since you refuse to acknowledge the requirements of the law, in that when somebody motions the court for dissolution of marriage, yes, and alleges the violating of the protection order from 2011, that allegedly took place on the 4th of May, yes, they intentionally waited 20 days so that they could file for dissolution of marriage, so that they could file, yes, a false police report on the 27th of May of 2012. Yes. Now, the Washington State Constitution says you have an obligation to inform law enforcement within 14 days of you having any knowledge of child abuse or child neglect. Yes. Now, you can't just decide, well, we're going to fill out all the necessary forms to petition the court for dissolution of marriage. Yeah. And then after the court gives us the right to serve a summons on the respondent, yes, then we're going to call the police and allege domestic violence and child abuse. But that's what you did. See, if it had been a real threat of domestic violence or child abuse, you would have called that day. Yes. Now, when I was living at the fifth wheel at 1023 Kitchen Dick Road, the actual property of Foursquare International, after I got off the phone with Healthy Families of Clallam County that day, yes, explaining to them that I was not trying to contact my wife, I specifically went out and told the associate pastor, David Wilson, yes, and a couple other employees of Kingsway Foursquare Church that somebody said that I was trying to contact my wife. Now, I went to the parking lot and I waited approximately 3 hours, yes, for the police to show up for the allegation of attempting to contact the petitioner. But there were no cops that showed up on that day. No. In fact, I was very surprised when I got arrested on Memorial Day weekend, the 27th of May, for the allegation of violating a protection order. Now, it looked like Healthy Families of Clallam County had intentionally filed for dissolution of marriage. And then they had me arrested for the allegation of something that took place 20 days before then. Now, this is what you call